We are live, we are live, we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is doing well after watching what was, the horror show. It was a pretty amped description, wasn't it? A pretty accurate description of what that was, what we just watched there. The horror show at Extreme Rules has just gone off the air on the WWE Network. Hi, Alfonso Pase says, "What's up?" Ian Thompson's back. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Just wow, there is so much to break down. This won't be a super long breakdown and a full super in-depth review. We'll do that tomorrow, but I thought it would just be fun to give instant reactions to what we just saw, because there is so much, I don't even know how to describe it. Confusion, weirdness, awkwardness, just really bizarre stuff. I mean, we'll go through the matches. And we'll start from there. So, pre-show, kickoff show, we had Kevin Owens defeat Buddy Murphy in what was a pretty good match, actually. I enjoyed that match. What I must say about the Buddy Murphy-Kevin Owens match is, given that at one point we were meant to have a United States Championship match on the show. We were meant to have Apollo Crews versus MVP for the United States Championship. Apollo Crews, we haven't seen him on WWE TV for a while, for a few weeks. MVP since then has released the new WWE United States Championship, crowned himself as the new champion, and Apollo Crews was meant to defeat MVP tonight and win the championship. We're subsequently told during the show, and I'm jumping all over the place a little bit here, but we're subsequently told throughout the show, later on in the show rather, that it's not going to happen. Apollo Crews didn't pass his pre-match physical due to the injury suffered at the hands of MVP and Bobby Lashley a couple of weeks ago. And that match it doesn't happen, and MVP just crowns himself as the new United States Champion. And the reason I mentioned that at the start here with the Kevin Owens-Murphy match is, okay, why didn't you just have the Kevin Owens-Murphy match then? That doesn't make any sense to me. Why would you have it then? Why would you have a quality match on the pre-show, announce it the day of, just a couple of hours before the show even got on the air, by the way? To me, that doesn't make any sense. For me, I would rather have, if you're going to have Kevin Owens versus Buddy Murphy, and again, I'm not going to complain about having their match. I think it's a great match and they're great wrestlers. But if you're going to have that match, why don't you just have that at the time, and why don't you have that later on in the show when you could have had Apollo Crews versus MVP? Remember, this is a show that started at 7 p.m. and we're currently at 9:45. So the runtime of this year's Extreme Rules is like 2.5 hours. Now, again, I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining about the runtime. If anything, thank Lord for that runtime, because sometimes it certainly beats the 5 or 6 hours pay-per-views, without a doubt. But why couldn't you just have Kevin Owens and Buddy Murphy on the main card? Doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. But the match was fine. Kevin Owens gets the win with a stunner. Enjoyable. Just wish it was on the main show. That was what I would say with that one. For those who are just joining the chat right now, if you haven't subscribed already, please do. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now. We're on our way to 500 subscribers, on our eventual goal to 1,000 subscribers. We're also accepting donations. You can do that by clicking the link in the description box. It's streamlabs.com/WrestleNews365. Don't feel like you have to donate or anything like that. It's just a way of supporting the channel if you do want to support the channel. How's the show been? Well, we'll get into it. We'll get into it. So the first match on the show was a tables match for the Smackdown Tag Team Championship. We have new Smackdown Tag Team Champions Shinsuke Nakamura and Cesaro defeat the New Day in a tables match. A surprising outcome for this one for me. Really surprising outcome. I didn't see Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura winning this one, purely because the way they'd built up this feud was Nakamura and Cesaro just beat the New Day on SmackDown a couple of times, get the better of the New Day. Usually that's how they start these feuds, and then they end with the champions retaining. That wasn't the case here. We've got new tag team champions. The way they finished this match is they had Cesaro powerbomb Kofi Kingston from the top rope to the outside through 2 tables stacked on top of each other. Awesome spot. Surprising outcome. Fun way to start the show. Enjoyed the match immensely. The two teams work great together. I still think tag team wrestling isn't taken seriously by WWE, but it was a fun opener. I can't say anything bad about it. Pretty much, I thought it was a great show. Great show. I didn't think it was a great show. I thought it was a great match. We're getting ahead of ourselves there. I thought it was a great match. I'm glad for Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura for them to get a bit of spotlight. Cesaro is looking like a tag team specialist at this point in WWE, right? He's been tag team champion with Tyson Kidd. He's been tag team champion with Sheamus, and now he's tag team champion with Shinsuke Nakamura. And he's also been tagged in tag teams with other people as well. He also was a tag team with Jack Swagger as the Real Americans, and I'm probably forgetting some others because it feels like Cesaro's in a new tag team every 5 minutes. But I think that one was a surprising one, but I think it was an interesting one. Next match was the SmackDown Women's Championship match. Bayley retained her SmackDown Women's Championship, defeating Nikki Cross in the process. Now, before this match, we had like a weird sort of positive affirmation segment backstage with Alexa Bliss, Nikki Cross, Asuka, and Kairi Sane, sort of trying to hype them all up for their matches tonight. Spoiler, it didn't go well for any of them. So that positive affirmation worked. If we learn anything from that, it's never be positive ever, because it doesn't work. But this match, I was pleasantly surprised by this one. Maybe that's not fair, actually. I was confident that Nikki Cross could deliver. I think that was the thing going into this. Is a lot of people said that they thought that Nikki Cross wasn't deserving of this position. That do you get really excited for a Nikki Cross match? Should Nikki Cross be in a championship match at a pay-per-view? And my response always to that was absolutely yes. She's a great performer. I think she's a great character wrestler. She can go in the ring. If you've seen her work in NXT or on the independent scene, you know that she can go. And it's exactly what happened in this case. Was she going to win? No. That was the only thing. Is coming into this match in the pay-per-view, you knew she wasn't going to win. The reason why she wasn't going to win is because Bayley's beat her 2 weeks on the last couple of Smackdowns. And they were teasing this going into the pay-per-view. That Nikki Cross was saying, this is my only moment. It's my big moment. I don't want people back home in Scotland to see me losing. I've got to show what I can do. She showed what she could do, but she did lose again. So, the spoiler to the people in Scotland, they saw her lose again. Sorry about that, Nikki. But Bayley gets the win after a bit of interference from Sasha Banks. Sasha Banks' hands, you remember those like legit boss sort of things they wear on their hands, a bit like knuckle dusters, a bit like brass knucks. It essentially was a brass knucks. She hands it to Bayley. Bayley hits Nikki Cross in the gut with it and gets the victory from that. But I thought Nikki Cross was the standout performer in this one. Obviously, Bayley and Sasha Banks are Bayley and Sasha Banks. Their work recently has been second to none, absolutely superb. But I felt that Nikki Cross really proved a lot of people wrong in this one, turned a lot of heads, showed people what she can do, and proved a lot of people wrong. Going into this one, I did think that Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss were going to split up, and we were going to see the end of Bliss Cross. We didn't see that. We didn't see anything like that at all. So as of now, Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss are still a tag team and still going to be a tag team going forward. Whether or not that changes in the near future, we'll have to wait and see. They certainly teased it on Smackdown, and I thought with the positive affirmation segment prior to the match, I thought, again, this was just another tease of them going to split up Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss. Wasn't the case, which I think is a good thing, because Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss are a good tag team, and yes, if they split up, they can feud against each other, and you can have heel Alexa Bliss back, which is probably her best version of herself, but I don't think that's the right place in the women's division right now. There's plenty of other women they could be using in as singles competitors, Naomi being one of them. Naomi does deserve better, and the women's tag team division needs teams. And Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross are an established team. They know each other well. They work together well. And the fans enjoy them as a tag team. So I would keep them as a tag team for a while. But big credit to Nikki Cross in this match. I thought she absolutely delivered. Now, as I mentioned, we then had the MVP and Apollo Crews scheduled United States Championship. But before the match, we had Tom Phillips, Byron Saxton, and Samoa Joe on commentary. They said that Apollo Crews hadn't passed his pre-match physical tests. I can't remember what they said. Some for a tendon injury, whatever. Some people are speculating it might have to do with the COVID testing. Does he or doesn't he not have COVID? I don't think it's really fair for me or anyone to speculate on someone's health of a private health issue, because that's what health issues should be. They should be private. It should be for Apollo Crews to reveal if he has or he hasn't tested positive. Obviously, given the current climate, we can make assumptions as to what the issue is of Apollo Crews, but ultimately, we don't know what's true and what isn't, so I don't think it's fair for me to speculate on that. What I will say is WWE must have known this prior to having this segment, prior to having the show tonight, I don't understand why they couldn't have done this on the pre-show and had Kevin Owens and Murphy in there instead. To me, that makes the most sense. But sometimes logic didn't rear its head tonight, and that was another case here. But because Apollo Crews could not compete, MVP declares himself the winner by forfeit and calls himself the new United States champion. Is this legit? Look, I don't know if MVP is the next United States champion. I don't know if he's being recognised as the United States champion. If it is the case, and if MVP truly is the next United States champion, then the year that MVP has had is insane, considering where he probably was at the start of the year. You think that MVP made his return to WWE by making a surprise appearance at the Royal Rumble. He gets eliminated easily by Brock Lesnar. Many assumed it was a one and only, one-time thing and a one-and-done kind of deal. He appears on the next night on Monday Night Raw, has a match against Rey Mysterio, loses, goes on social media, tells everyone, that's my final match, it was my retirement match, that's it, I wanted to tell my son I wrestled his favourite wrestler in my final match, I'm done. He then gets offered a producer role backstage, helps the backstage elements of the show, helps produce segments, produce matches. We then get into this pandemic era. And actually prior to that, I'm probably skipping forward too much there, but prior to the pandemic era, whilst he was a producer, he appeared in a couple of segments. Appeared in a VIP lounge with Drew McIntyre, where Drew McIntyre gave him a Claymore. You also had him appear in a segment with Edge and Randy Orton when Edge returned to Raw after Randy Orton's heinous attack. MVP was in that segment. And then also, we had, after the pandemic hit, and MVP became more of a featured player in-ring on the show. He's no longer a producer. He's more of an in-ring performer now. He doesn't do any producing job. I think it's just specifically an in-ring performer. Manages Bobby Lashley to a WWE Championship match. And also, now is potentially the United States champion after he last had the championship in, 2009? Maybe, so he would have championship victories 11 years apart. It's pretty spectacular. Gavin Rock says, who won, Braun or Bray? We'll have to wait out. We'll get to that shortly. As I mentioned, anyone in the chat who is new to the channel, please do subscribe. We're on our way to 500 subscribers. New subscribers should appear on the screen when they do subscribe to the channel with some fun WWE gifts. It's the same with donations. You can donate to WrestleNews365 at streamlabs.com/WrestleNews365. The link is in the description below. Donations will also flash up on the screen and you'll get a shout out as well. So next we had, we had the eye for an eye match. My, oh my. Not eye for an eye, my, oh my. Seth Rollins defeats Rey Mysterio via eye removal, I guess. Now, this is the match that I think everyone is talking about and will be talking about tomorrow and for quite a while when it comes to this. This is the part of the show where it got very, very bad, in my opinion. And not in terms of the match quality. I think that's really important to stress here. Not in terms of the match quality. The eye for an eye match, until we got to... This is what I said going into it. I must backtrack. This is what I said going into it. Rey Mysterio versus Seth Rollins on paper is going to be a great match. Seth Rollins versus Rey Mysterio is going to be a great match. Claps YT says Seth Rollins. Did I say Rey Mysterio won? Excuse me. Seth Rollins won. Via eye removal. Seth Rollins versus Rey Mysterio on paper is going to be a great match. And it was no different. That's exactly what it was. It was a great match. Because they're two great in-ring performers. It's what they do. They've got great chemistry. Some of the back and forth action was great. Some of the spots were great. We had Rey Mysterio hitting stomps to Seth Rollins on the outside. We had really creative spots, I felt, in there about the kendo stick being stuck in the ring post and trying to sort of joust the eye out. I was okay with that. And to be honest, going into it, I was okay with the over-the-top silly stipulation because I was curious as to how are WWE going to do this. It's a ridiculous gimmick. It's a ridiculous stipulation. How are WWE going to realistically do this and do it well? Can they do it and do it well? The answer is no, they can't. But the match itself, it must be said, the match itself was very good, and I enjoyed that part of it. I really did. But we get to the finish, and essentially we have the same sort of scenario which had to happen to Rey Mysterio initially on Raw a couple of months ago. Seth Rollins drives Rey Mysterio's eye into the steel steps. And I must say as well, before I completely go on my big rant, I felt slightly powerful in the sense that Rey Mysterio was pleading with Seth Rollins, please don't, Seth, no. And he kind of has a sort of a look of resignation as his eyes being gouged out of his head. And I was like, well, it was tough to watch. That wasn't bad, right? It being tough to watch is the point. It was difficult to watch, and you were like, oh, that's horrible. And you felt bad for Rey Mysterio. He's this legend, and he's come back from this injury, and he has his eye, damaged again. I'm cool with that. I was fine with it till then, because it was kind of getting me a little bit like, okay, not bad. But then it just got ridiculous. So he drives his eye into the steel steps, and you have Seth Rollins back off, and it looks like he's going to do some more damage. And you have Rey Mysterio sort of turn over, and he sort of reveals the damage to Seth Rollins, and Seth Rollins just looks horrified. He's like, oh my God, what is that? And Seth Rollins then actually begins to vomit. He goes into full LOD 2000 puke Darren Drozdoff and throws up in the WWE Performance Center. Are you talking about, by the way, about sanitizing everything and making sure that they wipe everything down, wash your hands, wear masks? There's some guy vomiting outside the ring. I mean, are they going to wipe that down? We had a puke spot in this match. And the reason that Seth Rollins was puking was because Rey Mysterio's eye had, by all accounts, popped out. And Rey Mysterio had, now if you go on social media, you will find out, we posted it on our Twitter account, Rey Mysterio had a fake eye in his hand. Yes, he had a fake eye sort of in his hand, sort of around his sort of eye area. It wasn't completely obvious. I didn't see it the first time round until I saw a replay of it, and then I saw it on social media also. But this is the worst fake eye you have ever seen in your life. This is a fake eye that looks like it was from a bad movie prop store or a bad joke store, or like, I don't know, bad cosplaying at San Diego Comic-Con. I don't even know. But it looked like a marble that had been painted red a bit. There was no blood. It was just bad. It was just a horrible, horrible finish. And that was the thought coming into this. This match is only going to be as good as the finish. And that is a recurring theme, by the way. But that was the thought. This match is only going to be as good as the finish. Because that's what it was. The match, if you'd cut this match off before you got to the finish, you'd have said, what, that is a damn good match. If you could have had Rey Mysterio win for 619 or have Seth Rollins win for stomp, man, it would have been a knockout match. It would have been great. But that finish, just the vomiting and the fake eye and just, it was bad. It was bad. It was, I don't think it's the worst finish of the night either, because we'll get onto that in a second in terms of logic. At least, look, I'm trying to find justification in positives, and I'm struggling, to be honest. But the whole point of the match, I thought, was to have the eye extracted from their opponent, which was, I guess, technically the case, considering he was holding the eye in his hand. I mean, even listen to that as a sentence, my word. But he did have that eye in his hand, and he did technically extract the eye, so Seth Rollins won the match. But then after the match, a bit later on in the show, we have Charlie Caruso backstage, says Rey Mysterio's gone to that dreaded local medical facility because they can't say hospital in WWE. And essentially, they said that the optic nerve hadn't been completely severed or hadn't been removed, so Rey Mysterio could potentially have his eye put back in and still have his vision intact. So basically, they've got themselves an out for it already. They've said that Rey Mysterio lost an eye, but he's not going to lose vision. He's had his eye put back in and he's going to be fine. So this idea that someone is leaving Extreme Rules without an eye, or this idea that this was going to be permanent, or the injury sustained by any of the people involved in this match was going to be permanent, isn't the case. It's nonsensical. It's farcical. The whole finish was farcical. It didn't make any sense. Logic disappeared. I know logic disappeared when they announced this match, the stipulation for this match. I was willing to the finish to give it credit. I'm not one of those people that just hears the idea and is going to say, it's terrible, get rid of it. I am one of these people that says, I'll watch it, digest it, and then I'll give you my opinion on it. That's exactly what I've done. The finish sucked. The finish was bad. Karen says this idea. Well, I mentioned on Twitter they went fake eyeball. You never go fake eyeball. Ever. You never go fake eyeball. You know? Never ever go fake eyeball. Who's that jumping out the sky with no eye? R-E-Y. Rey Mysterio. So the less said about that, the better. I'm not going to go on a full diatribe of it. It speaks for itself, and what it says for itself is it was awful. The next match, speaking of awful finishes, was for the Raw Women's Championship. And it was... I didn't even want to say that Sasha Banks defeated Asuka because she didn't. Again, this was a great match. This was probably the longest match on the show, I would probably say. It's the match that I thought should have been the main event. I was always saying, going into this should be the main event because it'll be the best match on the show. And you know what? In ring, it was. It was the best match on the show. Again, like with the eye for an eye match, the in-ring work, I can't discredit it. It was brilliant. Sasha Banks and Bayley, slow start. They built to a nice match. The chemistry that Sasha Banks and Asuka have was just tremendous. It worked, and it was a great match. A lot of false finishes. Asuka's in-ring work is phenomenal. For me, she's the best female worker in the world, up there with Io Shirai. She's the most complete female character in the world for me, without a shadow of doubt. When you add in the promos and you add in just knowing her character, Sasha Banks, amazing worker, one of the best workers in the world, especially as a female, but I think in general as well. Both great workers, and they've got great chemistry. It worked. Was awesome. It was awesome. However, we get to the last 5 minutes, and this awesome match just got the most cluster of cluster finishes you can ever imagine to see. This was WCW 2000, an episode of Nitro, an episode of Thunder, all balled into one. It just went on and on, this finish that made no sense whatsoever. You had Asuka lock in the Asuka lock. No, it was before that, wasn't it? So you had Bayley come in. She distracts the referee. But then you had, whilst the referee's distracted, Asuka gets like the green mist ready. She goes to get the green mist. Green mist goes in the face of the referee, who is now down and blinded. At this time, Sasha Banks still has a Women's Tag Team Championship under her, because Bayley's brought that in. She goes to use it. She misses. Asuka locks her in the Asuka lock. But in comes Bayley and Sasha Banks to help Sasha Banks. Asuka gets hit with the woman. I'm struggling to recite this because this is how much of a cluster finish it was. Asuka gets hit with a championship. The referee is blinded and down, so we don't know what's going on. At this point, Asuka has already tapped out to the Asuka lock, but Bayley decides she is just going to take the referee shirt off the referee, count the 1, 2, 3 like she's Paul Heyman at ECW One Night Stand 2006, and just hands the title to Sasha Banks and makes the timekeeper ring the bell. And even on like Wikipedia and that, they're saying that Sasha Banks won and is the new champion. What? What was that? It was awful. That finish was awful, and it ruined what could have been an absolutely brilliant match. And it was a brilliant match. But when you have to put all of these things into account, and I mentioned here about matches, oh, this is a great match, this was a great match. But like, I look at a match like a TV series or a TV show. You know, every episode, you have 10 episodes in the series, 9 of the episodes could be great, but the last episode, the finale episode, is just the worst. It doesn't pay off any of the things you thought it would, and it sours you on the whole series, or in this case, the whole match. That's exactly the same here. The match was great. I thought spots in there are tremendous. I thought the story was tremendous. Sasha Banks worked over Asuka's arms. All of this stuff was great, back and forth match, and then you have what that finish is, and I don't understand what that finish is, and it just soured me on the match completely, and it just didn't make any sense to me. I didn't like that finish. It was dumb. It was overbooked. It was overproduced. They had Sasha tap, but Sasha win, but Asuka did get the victory, but she loses. It's just dumb, and you can't even have a sort of an authority figure make a decision on it because WWE doesn't have authority figures anymore. They had Adam Pearce, but he's staying at home at the moment because he was lastly tested positive for COVID. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It just didn't make any sense to me. People are saying, well, it's a hook for Monday Night Raw tomorrow. Maybe. If anything, for me, it's a bit of a turn-off because it's like, there's no logic. And this was coming off the back of Rey Mysterio popping out a false eye. You know, that just as well could have been wrapped in tinfoil and be chocolate. It looked that bad and that fake. It was stupid. It was so stupid. Sasha Banks has the Raw Women's Championship at the moment, so Bayley and Banks technically hold all 4 championships. They don't actually, though. The commentators Tom Phillips and Byron Saxton and Samoa Joe are all saying this doesn't make any sense. Well, if you're saying that and you're being produced to say that, how do you think we feel? How do you think we feel? Because it didn't make any sense. It was dumb. Kara says Sasha as Raw star shouldn't have been in the match to begin with, in my opinion. I do agree. Obviously, she technically, I suppose, can because she's a tag team champion. But I do agree. I'd have preferred it to be a Raw star, but that's just... We're trying to add logic to where there is none. Speaking of that logic, though, we had Drew McIntyre defeat Dolph Ziggler for the WWE Championship. Of course, going into this one, we didn't know the stipulation for the match. Dolph Ziggler was given that opportunity by Drew McIntyre to name the stipulation, and he named an Extreme Rules match for the WWE Championship, which you go, okay, Dolph's an idiot, but he's not. He's actually quite smart. He says if Drew McIntyre gets disqualified or counted out, Dolph Ziggler would be the WWE Champion, and he also says this is an Extreme Rules match for just Dolph Ziggler, not Drew McIntyre. So, smart. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the logic of that. We knew that Dolph Ziggler wasn't going to win this match. He was never, ever, ever going to become WWE Champion. He was never, ever going to defeat Drew McIntyre. However, the logic here was there from Dolph Ziggler, and they had a damn good match. You can tell these guys are friends. They had a lot of chemistry. Dolph Ziggler did an elbow drop from about 30 foot in the air when he jumped off of the ring post through a table onto McIntyre. That was great. They sold McIntyre being very close to getting disqualified or counted out a couple of times, which was nice. At one point, McIntyre even looked like he was going to get counted out and rolls back in. You had Ziggler attack McIntyre with a steel chair, hitting him over the shoulder, which was nice. It was just a very fun spot. You had a very fun match as well. You had Dolph Ziggler hit a famouser to McIntyre from the from the announcer's table to the outside. It was fun. It was a good match. Again, finish, you saw it coming. We knew that Dolph Ziggler wasn't going to win the WWE Championship, but it doesn't make it any worse of a match. If anything, you could argue that whilst in terms of match quality, it wasn't as good a match as maybe an Asuka versus Sasha Banks, because the finish made sense, because it had logic, because it had psychology and storytelling, perhaps that was the better match over Asuka and Sasha Banks, because it made sense. The finish made sense. There was logic in there. It didn't make you go, what the hell was that? What is going on? The only horror show at Extreme Rules was the booking. I mean, the joke going into this show was the horror show is actually the WWE Performance Center with the lack of COVID testing and health and safety procedure policy that is there. But the horror show coming out of it is the booking and the finishes, because it was just horrendous. So Drew McIntyre gets the victory over Dolph Ziggler. Ziggler thinks that he's done everything. They even hit a rock bottom after a nice shout out to The Rock after The Rock endorsed Dolph Ziggler as WWE Champion a couple of days ago. So he thinks, what can I do? Goes for a super kick. McIntyre nips up and just bang, hits a claymore, beautiful claymore, right to the face of Ziggler to get the victory. Again, outcome we saw coming. Doesn't change though that I thought it was a really good match. And then finally, we had Braun Strowman versus Bray Wyatt in the Wyatt Swamp fight. No one won here. And I'm not even talking about Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt. I don't think the viewer did either. This was, in my opinion, awful. Really, really bad. It made 0 sense. And I know people will respond to that to say, well, these cinematic matches, especially Bray Wyatt's, like the Firefly Funhouse match, aren't made to make sense. It wasn't a match, though, because there was not a lot of brawling or fighting in there. I think maybe the best part of it is that we saw a figment of Braun Strowman's imagination of Alexa Bliss, who was under a sort of veil, and she talks about their relationship on Mixed Match Challenge, and that Braun Strowman's always had a crush on her, I guess, and she was there for a bit. I believe she was also the one to put the snake in Braun Strowman's face. So Alexa Bliss was involved, and that was fun. But apart from that, it just to me, it just didn't make any sense. This a couple minutes in, you had Braun Strowman getting attacked by an elderly version of Braun Strowman with a shovel. What? I say an elder version, a previous version rather, of Braun Strowman with a shovel. What? Why? Again, okay, and I get it's meant to be weird, and I get it's meant to be different, and I wanted it to be weird, but I still want it to make sense. Angel Montez is right. The swamp fight was stupid. It didn't make any sense. And I'm all for the suspension of disbelief and all of that stuff, but a 2015 version, Black Sheep version, attacking Braun Strowman with a shovel. He's then tied up, and then Bray Wyatt cut a promo that was way, way too long. And it reminded me of those old Eater of Worlds promos from Bray Wyatt that were just rambling, and it might sound harsh, boring. That was the problem. Some of those promos he used to do were dull. And that was the problem with Bray Wyatt for a while, is that he had these long promos, and you sort of go, am I meant to understand these, or am I not meant to understand them? Because he's not telling a story here. It's just sort of, at the end of it, you go, okay, I feel like I've wasted my time. And that's what it felt like watching this swamp fight. I felt like I just wasted my time. He brawls with, I guess, some Wyatt minions, one of which gets set on fire, and he laughs. So, okay, that was a thing. And they brawl into the swamp itself, and they fight in there, and he throws Bray Wyatt onto a boat, and Bray Wyatt sort of rides off into a boat, and then suddenly you hear the boat come back, and then Bray Wyatt attacks Braun Strowman with a paddle, and it was kind of like, okay. Nothing felt here revolutionary. It felt like people trying to be too creative and trying to think too out of the box, but it was so far out of the box that it was just ridiculous. Again, all for the suspension of disbelief, but just no. It just did not work. This one was a pass. This one was a fail. It did not work. So we have the end of the swamp fight, if that's what it is. I wouldn't even call it a swamp fight. A thing, a segment. Probably like a lot of things you see in swamps, just lots of turds, because that's what it felt like. You have Braun Strowman throw Bray Wyatt into the swamp. He says it's over. You have the little card of the end of the show flash up, and I thought, was that it? Because that finish felt weak. And then suddenly you have someone, or Bray Wyatt, come up and pull Braun Strowman into the swamp, and then we have the slow reveal of the Fiend, who comes out of the swamp and stares into the camera to end the show. What I will say is I thought the closing image of that was very good. I thought the closing image of the Fiend coming out of the swamp was a great visual. The Fiend as a character, for me, aesthetically just looks great. The mask, the contacts, all of it just looked absolutely great. And I can't fault the production for that. I thought that was really, really good. It felt like coming into this, to be honest, that we were going to get the Fiend versus Braun Strowman at some point. The idea being that Braun Strowman beat Bray Wyatt, Firefly Funhouse Bray Wyatt, at Money in the Bank, and he pretty much defeats the Eater of Worlds version of Bray Wyatt, the horror show at Extreme Rules, by throwing him into the swamp. He even mentioned on Smackdown he doesn't want to face the Fiend because the Fiend is all of the bad things about himself, and they're going to obviously play it up like the only thing that Braun Strowman fears is the Fiend. And even though he shouldn't fear anything, he's the monster among men, the one thing he does fear is the Fiend version of Bray Wyatt. So it looks like we're going to get the Fiend versus Braun Strowman at SummerSlam, I think, for the Universal Championship, and I think that's eventually where Bray Wyatt will defeat Braun Strowman, and Braun Strowman will drop the Universal Championship back to Bray Wyatt, back to the Fiend. Of course, this is also the Fiend's first appearance on WWE television since defeating John Cena at WrestleMania 36, so always good to see the Fiend back on WWE television. But that's probably the best that I can give it. The highlight from that swamp fight was the Alexa Bliss spot, which was interesting, but still not great. And I thought the Fiend visual at the end was very good, and it sets up the match at SummerSlam. Apart from that, I thought it's probably the worst cinematic offering we've got so far, even though technically you could say that the Street Profits versus the Viking Raiders segment at Backlash was cinematic, but I thought it was on a par with that. I just thought it wasn't good. I thought it was overly confusing. I thought it didn't make any sense. I know it was meant to be weird, but I felt like, put it this way, when you're watching the Boneyard match at WrestleMania, right, there is a suspension of disbelief. You know it's not real, but it's good entertainment, and you can get lost in it. I didn't feel I could get lost in the swamp fight because I was watching it just going, this just feels dumb. It just feels, the acting felt bad, the promos felt bad. I don't think it was shot particularly badly. I just think the creative involved in it just wasn't good. And that sums up the show. I just don't think the creative in this was very good. The finishes of all of this show and the creative just wasn't good. The finish of the eye for an eye match wasn't good. And it wasn't done well. That was always going to be the key to that match, but it wasn't done well and it wasn't good. Seth Rollins throwing up, I never want to see ever again. Okay? And Rey Mysterio, I think, will be back, and I think he'll be back with both eyes because they kind of confirmed that. I think, again, the finish for the Asuka-Sasha Banks match, it wasn't good. The match, Asuka versus Sasha Banks was great. I thought their in-ring work was tremendous. The finish wasn't good. And I know these cinematic matches are to taste, and I'm sure if you disagree with me, let me know in the live chat. But it didn't click with me. It didn't click with me. And I am a fan of cinematic wrestling. Maybe it's because I'm not totally hot on the Eater of Worlds Bray Wyatt character, but it just didn't jive with me. The thing I enjoyed the most was the Fiend returning, and look, I'm interested in the Fiend versus Braun Strowman. I haven't given up on this feud or anything like that. I thought coming into this, I enjoyed the build up to it. And I think Braun Strowman's done a really good job over the last few weeks of his hyping up for this. And I enjoyed the Fiend returning because I'm a big fan of the Fiend. But the Fiend can't lose. He should have never lost to Bill Goldberg, and he shouldn't lose to Braun Strowman when he eventually faces off with him. So overall show, I think the biggest theme coming out of it was it just felt way too chaotic, and the finishes were not great. The matches were great. The matches in terms of being in the ring were very good, I felt. I didn't think any match, I looked at the match and say that, oh, the in-ring work was terrible, because I felt the in-ring work for every match was very good, actually. Overall, I thought it was great. But once again, it felt like WCW in 2000 in that the creative when it came to the finishes, or the creative when it came to the stories that they were trying to tell, just lacked logic. And I do empathize with WWE for trying to do something slightly different and trying to do something imaginative, but that doesn't mean that it works. And in this case, it just didn't work. And that's my opinion for that instant reaction. But what are your thoughts? Let me know your thoughts about the matches on tonight's show. We've got Plasma7683 said, yeah, eye for an eye was horrible, but they were a fan. They said Swamp was awesome. Ian Thompson says Braun Strowman versus The Fiend at SummerSlam. Angel Montez says Swamp fight was stupid. Let me know your thoughts in the live chat. Be sure also, any new viewers here, to subscribe to Wrestle News 365. We're on our way to 500 subscribers. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now. And any new subscribers should pop up on the screen. And I really appreciate everyone that has subscribed and has been tuning in for these watch-alongs. These streams have been something a bit new, but it is something we want to do with the channel more often going forward, especially for these big events. But once we get to 1,000 subscribers, we'll be looking to do them more for Raws, Smackdowns, AEWs, you name it, Impact Wrestling on a Tuesday. I would really like to do some live streams for that also. So the quicker we get to 1,000 subscribers, that's the aim there. But anyone that hasn't subscribed, please do. I really do appreciate that. As I mentioned, also, we are taking donations as well. That's at streamlabs.com/WrestleNews365. That's also the links in the description box below for that also. Don't feel like you have to, but anything you kick back to the channel is very, very, very much appreciated. And it certainly would help support the channel also. Ian Thompson says, are you streaming Raw tomorrow? We'll probably have a decision about that in early tomorrow. We're still thinking about that one. Obviously, it's late here in the UK, which is difficult for that one. And it depends on the audience, I suppose. But if that's what you guys want, then let me know in the comment section. If you guys want me to stream Raw, let me know in the comment section, or let me know in the live chat, and we can look at doing that. Be sure also to give this video a big like. The more likes we get, the better we get for the recommendations on people's feeds, and more people can come and view the channel. Be also sure to share the video if you haven't already with your friends, if you've enjoyed these watch-alongs. You can also follow us on all of our social media platforms. They're on the screen right now, and the links are in the description box below. But it's at 365Wrestle on Twitter, at WrestleNews365 on Facebook and Instagram. And potentially we might do something tomorrow, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. But leaving this here, that is the instant reaction to the horror show at Extreme Rules. What are your thoughts on tonight's show? Did you enjoy it? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you despise it? Are you keeping an eye out for the future? What are your best eye puns as well? Let me know those in the comment section below. If you enjoyed it, let me know. If you didn't like it, let me know. Like I said, on this channel, there are no right and wrongs opinions. They're just opinions. We're all here just to talk about wrestling and enjoy talking about wrestling. You shouldn't have to worry about feeling judged for whatever your opinion is. If you like this show, then great. It's your opinion. That's awesome. We're just here to all watch wrestling and enjoy it, so that's the most important thing here. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in, watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across these streams today. I really appreciate everyone that's taking the time